Taiwan. I'm Sandy Chi with news from here in Taiwan and around the world. The Defense Ministry says 62 Chinese military aircraft were spotted around Taiwan since Thursday morning. The ministry also reported 6 Chinese naval vessels operating around the country. 55 of the aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait and entered Taiwan's Air Defense Identification Zone, or ADIZ. The zone is not Taiwan's sovereign airspace, but is used by the military for defensive purposes. Taiwan's Defense Ministry says the Chinese aircraft were conducting joint patrols with the naval vessels. Taiwan mobilized its own forces in response. The incursions come as China holds military exercises in waters north of Taiwan. Tensions have been building in the Taiwan Strait over the last week after a Taiwanese fishing vessel was boarded and detained by the Chinese Coast Guard for crossing into China's territorial waters. Reese Ayres spoke to Cory Lee Bell, Project and Research Officer at the Australia-China Relations Institute at the University of Technology, Sydney, to find out more about the situation.
So both sides have recognised that the boat that was carrying Taiwanese and Indonesian fishers did in fact cross into Chinese waters. But Taiwan's saying that China's detainment of that boat is a little heavy-handed, particularly given that these kind of accidental crossovers happen quite frequently. So is China trying to make some kind of point here?
So we've seen these sorts of escalations, these sorts of harder tactics in other parts of the South China Sea, for instance. We've seen more aggression towards the Senkaku Islands or the Diaoyu Islands. A couple of years ago, a scholar in China was saying basically they've entered into a new phase. Their core interests, as they're called, in the South China Sea, generally, not just Taiwan, they're going to be more aggressive in pursuing those or into defending them, as I would say. So that particular incident may not necessarily be just something to do with the Lai administration or cross-strait tensions. It may actually have to do with a broader shift in how China is engaging with other parties in the region and an attempt to basically exert its authority, and maybe there's an element of intimidation there as well.
A pretty significant uptick in incursions into its ADIZ. Do you think that the events of this week, the fishing boat being seized, do you think that's a cause for China to have this increase in military presence around Taiwan, or is there more at play here?
I think there's more at play. I don't think the incident necessarily has to do with the incursions. These obviously, there's lots of planning that goes into these. If it's going to be a sort of ad hoc thing that requires a mobilization of a lot of resources, it's very disruptive. So that doesn't happen for very small incidents. I think when you look at the ADIZ incursions, you need to look at the broader trends, the longer trends. And there has been a pattern that's emerged over the last few years. I've actually written about this before. Of over the last few years, you've seen escalations in the peaks and in the frequency. The peaks is in terms of the number of overflights, the number of planes that are entering in a given period or in a single day. And you've seen increases in the intensity. One could be just simply to wear Taiwan's Air Force and its Defence Force resources down, because obviously when you send up interceptors, that requires, those planes need maintenance. It just also creates a sort of the sort of general atmosphere of impending doom within Taiwan as well. It sort of creates that sort of political pressure.
China's still holding a Taiwanese fisher that it detained back in March, and there's no news yet on when these fishers might be released. Is China using civilians as pawns in a bigger game here?
So the way that the legal system works there, especially involving foreigners, it can be politicized to a degree, but it also has inherent problems with that legal system. And in things like the territorial waters, these sorts of issues, there's a broader political statement as to what sort of gravity China wants to attach to those issues, to those issues of its sovereign waters and people violating them. That's a broader issue. So again, that may not be directly related to the actual Taiwan tensions, but more to the issue of China making this sort of stronger effort to sort of protect what it calls its core interests in the region, to enforce its maritime claims against not just Taiwan but other actors in the region who have overlapping and often, you would say, fairly well-supported claims.
That was Reese Ayres speaking to Cory Lee Bell, Project and Research Officer at the Australia-China Relations Institute. Defense analysts from the US are in Taipei for a forum with Taiwan's sole national security think tank. They discussed Beijing's growing coercion of Taiwan and what the US and Taiwan can do about it. Jo Sung was there.
We're here at the Taipei headquarters of top security think tank INDSR, and they're hosting defense scholars from DC-based think tank, the Hudson Institute, for a day of panel discussions, and China, of course, is a central focus. In particular, security analysts here are talking about Beijing's new guidelines to their anti-secession laws, which now threaten the death penalty for those who support Taiwan independence. The U.S. government has already condemned this. Now, joining the discussion here via video message, the president and CEO of the Hudson Institute, John Walters, said that Beijing's use of judicial guidelines in this way sets a false legal precedent for unification by non-peaceful means. The dangers of this were echoed by INDSR's CEO, Chen Mingqi, who said Beijing's intimidation tactics are a global concern.
这些都是利用法律的手段来不断的对我们进行压迫。那么一个很重要的一个回击的方式是透过提高这个大家共同的认识，不管是在这个台湾内部或者在国际社会上面。
Now, INDSR recently reported that Taiwan-U.S. defense research exchanges have elevated to a semi-official level, meaning such academic discussions have been used to strengthen ties with partners. Taipei and Washington don't share official diplomatic relations, and because China blocks Taiwan from almost all official global forums, opportunities to share knowledge through think tanks like this is an important way for Taiwan to collaborate with other countries on security issues. As for concerns on China's legal coercion, defense scholars say that with regional peace at stake, Taiwan and the U.S. must lead like-minded countries to uphold international laws and protect the status quo. Scott Huang and Joyce Zhen in Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Almost 30 countries have gathered in Hawaii for the world's largest naval exercises, known as RIMPAC. We'll be covering these drills over the next few weeks. Our reporter Jaime Ocon is joining us now from Honolulu. Jaime, what have we seen from the exercises so far?
Well, like you said, these are the world's largest Navy exercises, and the main focus here is to build connections and partnerships. And it's also a rare chance for the countries here to learn from one another and practice out at sea. Now, we were actually invited by some of those countries to check out some of the warships that will be participating in this year's drills, and we actually got to speak to some of those sailors that were on board.
Australian and Peruvian sailors. An unlikely pairing, but coming together here in Hawaii. Every 2 years, navies from around the world gather at the Pearl Harbor Navy base in Honolulu. They're here for RIMPAC. Also known as the Rim of the Pacific exercise, it's organized by the U.S., and it's the world's largest international naval drill, intended to strengthen cooperation with countries around the Pacific Ocean. The U.S. also invites allies from Europe and elsewhere. This year, more than 30 vessels, 150 aircraft, and 25,000 personnel will be taking part in the exercise. Taiwan has never participated in RIMPAC, despite recent calls from U.S. lawmakers to extend an invite. RIMPAC officials here told TaiwanPlus the decision is in line with the U.S.'s One China policy. For sailors here, RIMPAC is a rare opportunity to reconnect with old friends.
I've been meeting a lot of classmates. I didn't know they were here. I have a classmate in the Peruvian ship, I have a classmate in the Malaysian ship, and there's a bunch of classmates that are just stationed here, so it's wonderful. It's how small the Navy world is.
For others, it's a chance to learn something new.
Because our RIMPAC has a wide variety of countries' navies to such extent, so this is a precious opportunity for us.
It's really fun, good conversation, but also at work, it's a really fun being able to do large-scale exercises with other navies and how we work together. It's really impressive.
But RIMPAC is not just about forging connections. It's also about demonstrating unity. In recent years, China has increased its military presence around Taiwan, the South China Sea, and in the wider Indo-Pacific region. While officials at RIMPAC are careful about the wording they use, analysts here in Hawaii say China is the main concern.
This is essentially the primary competitor, not the only one in the Indo-Pacific, but certainly this is what we see as what the United States calls the pacing challenge, the challenge to come. And so RIMPAC is a way to actually respond to what could happen and hopefully deter a future war.
RIMPAC is all part of a strategy to maintain regional security through cooperation between the U.S. and its allies and partners.
This is the HMAS Sydney, the only warship from Australia here. And as the country looks to be more active in the Indo-Pacific region, the crew from this ship is looking to take the lessons they learned from RIMPAC and apply them when they get back home.
A big part of these exercises is learning how each Navy operates and how they can come together to form an effective fighting force. That means relying on each Navy's capabilities, especially during a conflict.
I would say trust is a key part of it, but it's the communication that is critical. And to achieve effective communication, you need to be with each other, talk a common language, which most navies do, and to actually have time to actually engage each other so you can approach problems.
With the security environment in Asia growing more complex, RIMPAC is an attempt to show that in the face of an increasingly assertive China, for the U.S. and its allies, there's still strength in numbers.
So as you saw there, many of those ships are still actually docked at Pearl Harbor Navy base. That's because they're not quite ready to head out to sea yet. However, next week we'll be joining some of those ships to see what they've been learning and to see what they can put in action when they conduct live fire exercises in the Pacific Ocean. So for many sailors here, they'll have the long weekend, the July 4th long weekend, to get ready, get all the equipment they need before they head out to sea, which will last for 2 weeks. Sandy, back to you.
Thank you, Jaime. That was Jaime Ocon reporting for us live from Honolulu. Be sure to stay tuned in next week as we continue our coverage of the RIMPAC exercises in Hawaii. 11 Taiwanese nationals arrested for fraud in Indonesia have been sent back to Taiwan to face punishment. The Criminal Investigation Bureau says it's identified the 11 people as fugitives and worked with Indonesian authorities to escort them back to the country. They were among 103 people arrested for internet fraud on the Indonesian island of Bali last week. All but one were from Taiwan. The last was from Hong Kong. The remaining 91 Taiwanese nationals are expected to return to Taiwan in the coming days. Wildfires across Northern California have forced nearly 30,000 people from their homes. The fire started on Tuesday and quickly spread across the area, destroying homes and vehicles. But authorities say it has stopped growing. The local fire department had reported 4 injuries as firefighters work against a brutal heatwave and dry conditions to contain the flames. Independence Day celebrations in a nearby city have been cancelled over the fears that fireworks may start another blaze. An indigenous community from southeast Taiwan are protesting plans to build a resort in their village.
下卑朗部落这些在呼吸的人类，我们是活的人。 怎么可以在环境报告里面一句话都不说？这是什么样的一个看不见的能力？
People from Pulaski Village in Taidong County say the hotel is planned to be built on their ancestral and sacred sites. They say the plans disregard the way of life and would disrupt local culture. The Environment Ministry says it will re-evaluate the proposal after more discussions with developers. 6 people have been arrested in India after 121 people died in a stampede. The 4 men and 2 women are in custody, are organizers of a Hindu religious event in northern India that drew 250,000 people on Tuesday. They fled the scene when the fatal stampede started. They are assistants to the event's preacher, who is said to have retreated to his monastery since the incident. Taiwanese sprinter Yang Junhan has clinched a spot at this year's Paris Olympics.
其实当下心情是还蛮平静的，因为我们都很积极的去准备，不管是赛事或者训练。
This will mark Yang's second appearance at the Summer Olympics after competing in the 100-meter dash at Tokyo 2020. The 27-year-old, known as the fastest man in Taiwan, ranks 46th in the world in the men's 200 meters. Thank you for watching What's Up Taiwan. Finally, we take you to New York, where people are getting ready for the annual Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Contest. I'm Sandy Chi. Take care and see you next time.